hit record before I forget that. But I really appreciate you guys coming on and having a chat with me today. So let me start it off. These gentlemen are both from Newton in South Africa, which is a BPO firm. But I want to do personal introductions. So, Carl, maybe we could start with you. Could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Awesome. Great to be here, Adam. Thanks for having us. Sure. I'm an accountant from background, so it's I'm a simple guy. Don't know, it's not never been talked about as being exciting, but no. So I'm my name's Carl de Villiers. I'm based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Personally, I'm a family guy. My wife Claudia and I have lots of fun raising teenagers. But when I'm not doing that, I'm here at Newton working, and I've been here for 20 years now. Started off in the finance area, and somewhere along the way realized there's something outside of my spreadsheets, and I got more into operational and management roles, and sort of worked through the ranks in the business, and been doing collections, account receivable management, both locally in South Africa and also globally more recently. Been working with Steph for 16 years, so can't get rid of him, but here we are still together. Yeah, what probably the thing I'm really passionate about is travel. So I love traveling the world and seeing other places, other countries, other people. So looking forward to being in the States in a couple of days' time.
Very much looking forward to meeting you face to face at the RMAI conference. I think that's going to be a great time. And we're going to talk a little bit more about South Africa and travel. I definitely want to come back to the travel discussion. But for those of you that have not seen the recent 5-minute pitch that I had done with Stefan or the Receivables Roundtable, which I highly suggest taking a peek at both of those, and I'll link those in the description on YouTube. But Stefan, could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to the seat that you're in today?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Great being with you again today. As you mentioned, we had a chat in the 5-minute pitch, or it was more telling more about me. Yeah, been at Newton for now close to 16 years. Before that, studied actuarial science and mathematics and statistics, and then moved through a banking career into the space of accounts receivable management. So very much part of the growth journey of Newton that we followed. Been party to the massive growth that we've seen both here and globally, and been very proud of this story. Been in the business development space my whole life, so I get the business, and then Carl has to make sure he works it in a proper way. But we've been together for, as I said, 16. Old married couple, the two of us, probably.
Well, it's been a pleasure to work with you guys, because really your whole team has been just very attentive throughout our entire process of kind of getting to know each other. And so I've had a lot of fun getting to know you guys, but it's also changed my perspectives a little bit on Africa and BPO needs in general. So I can honestly say, prior to meeting you guys, my criteria scorecard for BPO was a little bit different, and it's changed and evolved based on some of the things that we've talked about. And so one of the first things that I kind of wanted to hit on from a discussionary standpoint is an English speaking country, right? Like, English is not like the second language, it's the primary language. And so, like, you guys are coming from it's a BPO environment where I think the US is used to BPO in India, BPO in South America, right? Where there's a language barrier that has to be broken, but it doesn't seem like that's the same kind of problem that you guys face. Has that been something that has fueled your growth?
Absolutely. I think that's fundamental to it. It's one of our real propositions as a country that we want to benefit from. I mean, interestingly, from a South African perspective, there are lots of languages. We're a fantastically culturally diverse country. You know, if you ever visit it, you'll get that. And there's 11 official languages, which is fantastic. So there's a lot of those languages, but everyone really speaks English. So English is the common language. As you've heard Steph, he speaks really even better English than me, and it's not his first language. So English is well spoken. It's the way the school system works, and you've got all these young graduates coming out of the school system speak really good English, naturally understand it well, fluently speak it. So yeah, and whether you're coming as a tourist. Very easy to travel around the country because you'll always find English-speaking people. I mean, everyone will be able to converse with you, and likewise from a business perspective, we can really tap into, you know, a wonderful talent pool, where the English part is good, and importantly, I think the accents are sort of well calibrated, and we obviously look specifically for people with the best neutral accent, as we call it. There's no such thing really, but you know,
True.
just to resonate with the global audience, that there's nothing, you know, too much on the extreme side, so people are comfortable understanding that.
I mean, it almost sounds more British than, you know, than coming from another language that's translating into English.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, I think the thing too is that people sometimes find it a little bit difficult to place the South African English accent. And I think that's the first thing. But I think also, you know, as Carl said, you know, our schools teach in English. The business language is English. Our day-to-day commerce is in English. You know, people just work and live in English every day. And you know, the kids, you know, the TV that kids watch, big influence from the US, you know, with all the channels available here, all the movies, all the insights, sport, everything's available. So even though you have the English is also going to have a close cultural link to the US, you know, despite its roots elsewhere.
That was kind of my next question, right? Was about the cultural kind of connection versus just that language connection, right? So, like in a lot of countries in which I've worked in various aspects, right? Not always easy for the locals to understand the culture in which in the country in which they're working, right? How is that cultural kind of crossover between South Africa and the US? It sounds like it starts very young with children, but like is that like further developed through their schooling, or, you know, how does that kind of look from your perspective?
Yeah, maybe a way to describe that is probably one of the fastest growing sports in South Africa is basketball. So you can ask
Okay.
any kid about what's happening in the NBA, and that's just where it starts. So
Okay.
I mean, basketball sneakers is definitely the fashion item du jour of everybody here. But then, you know, we get a lot of insight. We get all the press. We understand exactly what's happening in the US, and I think people are increasingly finding that, you know, it's easy to say the US is a very big country, but it's also not only one country. It's 50 plus states and very different regions, and, you know, spectrums of people's approach to life. And we get that. We sometimes listen to calls and we can hear how our agents moving from an East Coast accent to a West Coast accent to a Texan, you know, but understanding that
Mhm.
those are different areas. Yeah.
And that there's a
I mean,
cultural difference.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and building onto that, I mean, in terms of, sort of similarities in the worlds that we live in, you know, we also have a similar credit financial services system. So when it comes to collections
Okay.
and receivables management, comes to tech, you know, they're familiar with concepts like that. So again, you know, we take the raw ingredients, and there's a good based understanding of cultural affinity and the products, and then obviously we train and we take it, and we through learning and development, we really then ratchet it up and get them even more acclimatized when they're in the role. And it's, yeah, I mean, they, you know, sometimes you can almost forget when they on the calls in the US environment, they almost really become, you know, for that moment in time, you know, really into what's happening in the US. It really becomes an extension.
It's interesting the way that you guys look at that and that observation, because like my wife is Brazilian and she moved to the United States about 2 years ago, and it was a lot of the same observations. Like as we've traveled around the country, she's like, Arizona is nothing like New York. Like these two, like how is this the same country, right? And coming from Brazil, which is also a very large country, there's a lot of the cultures to it. So I think as Americans, we tend not to necessarily look at it. It's interesting to see how you guys have dissected that from kind of looking from the outside in and saying, here's how you guys are actually behaving. Because it is clear when you think about it that there's major behavioral differences. There's also not just accent, but speed of voice, because the speed of a conversation the speed of a conversation in New York and the speed of a conversation in the South are going to be two different things, right? And then there's those of us that took speech lessons to try and find that neutral accent, which is a real thing and very difficult to attain. It takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. So I respect that significantly. But as we've talked about schooling and we've talked about those pieces, right? One of the things that I think comes to the mind of Americans is stability when we think about Africa. And to put that into perspective, you know, from my perspective, as I kind of talk to the audience as well, is, you know, I've done deals in a variety of countries around Africa, whether it be from a variety of different types of businesses, and I think that everywhere in the world there's some level of instability, but that doesn't seem to be like an issue for South Africa on the whole. And I don't think we can go comparing it to what's going on in the Congo or Sierra Leone, right? Like clearly those are very different places. Talk to us a little bit about that political climate in South Africa specifically.
Yeah, Adam, I think that I think the main thing is that we are extremely proud of our democracy. We went through a big change in 1994.
Mhm.
We're very proud of the new democracy that was founded, on the spirit of Nelson Mandela at the time. And we on the back of that, we wrote a very robust constitution. So, as in any country, there are polarizing political beliefs, and in South Africa, where you have a material difference in income levels, you have that nuance also coming in, and so people have very different aspirations of what they want from a country.
Mhm.
But every year, every 5 years, or actually every 2.5 years, there's some form of election taking place, either on local level or a national level. And those are always free and fair, and people have the ability to criticize the government and opposition parties. And sometimes there's quite robust debate in all sorts of places. But we're very proud of this free and fair democracy. So that's great.
I mean, that's exciting. Honestly, it makes me as a future tourist to South Africa. It's kind of exciting. Like I love learning about the underlying environments and the kind of the cultures and how they evolved. I was lucky to go to college with a couple of gentlemen from South Africa and got a little bit of a taste of it, but not as much as I plan in the coming year. Now, as we talk, so we've got an English speaking population, we've got a stable government, and now let's talk a little bit about technology and infrastructure, right? Because that also becomes one of those big things is like, okay, so you're at the bottom of Africa, like where's the internet coming from, right? And how stable is that internet going to be? Now, that was my first question when we first met, right? Like I want to say in the first like 5 minutes of us talking, I was like, all right, so what's up with the internet? So talk through a little bit, and I don't have the slides to put up here, but I can always, we can make those available and you can check out the 5 minute pitch. But talk to me a little bit about the stability of your technical infrastructure across South Africa.
Well, maybe I'll kick off just it's sort of probably just before I get to that, it almost talks to the actual physical infrastructure, because that's just as important. And I think a lot of people have perceptions of what they think they might find here. And if you ever come here to travel, of course we're blessed with wonderful game reserves, with wildlife and animals, which are fantastic. But when we're talking about business, where we are, I mean, if you could look around where I'm now, I mean, it's an office, it's a modern office. There's cars going to and fro. There's shopping malls. There's big buildings, sky rises. It's a really solid infrastructure. It's in the country, and we've got many cities like that here in the country. So that's kind of the starting point in terms of air, rail, road, buildings, and obviously then leveraged in that is the technical side of things. So from a connectivity thing, and that's really key. What we're talking about here is there are multiple. I mean, we can get the tech guys, and anyone's more interested, we can always bring that in. But I believe there's 6 through different undersea cables. All they measure these in terabytes per I think millisecond. I mean, it's beyond me. It's really immediate. We set these up properly, so latency is an absolute irrelevance. There's redundancy in terms of if any particular route goes down. So that really, from the technology side, the connectivity side is something we're very familiar with. We do all the time, and it's amazing what can be done in the modern age.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's 6 intercontinental underwater cables that are running up to South Africa. Because what I never realized until I was talking with Stefan that first time was that I was always aware of the internet coming in through Kenya, but I never really thought about how does it get to the bottom. And I had I had a family member who was involved in a Tanzanian schooling house, right? And she was very involved, but she was always having internet trouble. So I was always curious as to how like that infrastructure was set up. But Stefan showed me like a very clear diagram of like where those cables are coming from, right? Because they are coming from multiple locations. It's not like everything's coming from South America or everything is coming from Australia. Like you've got things that are coming in from multiple locations and even directly up from Europe and down towards the south side too, which I thought was really interesting. I'm a super nerd. I love that kind of stuff. So it was really interesting for me to see how stable that type of connectivity has become and how that's we've moved away from the use of, let's call it, satellite and cell signals for that connectivity, and now we've got hard lines, right, which is similar to all of us experiencing the differences in plugging your computer into the internet versus operating over Wi-Fi is great, but it doesn't have that same level of connectability. So I think it's been interesting to see kind of how that has evolved. And I know from a technology standpoint, as we move from connectivity and talk a little bit about kind of how some of the tool sets that you guys are using. I know, Stefan, you've talked to me a little bit about like omni-channel is like at the core of everything that you guys do.
Yeah. Adam, maybe just to kind of tell you a little bit about our use of technology. When COVID hit us, we had to pivot the entire organization. It was roughly 2,000 agents in South Africa to a work from home construct. We did that very quickly over a few weeks. What we learned from that is that we can actually work from home, and we've retained quite a material portion of our workforce to continue to work from home. That's changed our business materially. So we have a hybrid model. So our local servicing model is to service mostly from work from home, and our international clients are serviced from our office premises. But that just shows you that we have clear ways and technological ways to do that. Speaking of the omni-channel, we've been fortunate to be able to communicate with our customers and our clients through text and voice mechanisms for quite some time, and that has taught us how to utilize a multi-pronged strategy when communicating with customers. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at the various stages of debt collection, of course, different customers, different age groups, different circumstances prefer to engage with you in different ways, and we've enabled all our clients to communicate whichever way that is. What are those? Those are voice, those are text message, that's WhatsApp, that's email, there's two-way text, we've even got a chatbot going. So all of those are available, and we've, on top of that, of course, it's all very well that you've got a communication channel. It's something we pride ourselves at, really, the BI and analytics and how you utilize data and right time to call and optimal usage of those channels. Carla, yeah, I mean, that's your platform, so
no, you've said it well, and I mean, absolutely, it's really core part, and it's as anyone in the accounts receivable sector will know that it's about being able to engage with consumers in multiple facets in multiple ways. So we're very alive to that, and we've got experience. And again, that goes to when we look to partner with offshore partners. We have a good base to really partner with them in terms of whatever they're doing in terms of their approach. We're familiar with it, and we can participate, and we can even give our own views and inputs to help them improve their own business, other than just being a simple outsourced partner.
Understood. So rather than just being the muscle, you can also help to provide some of the thought process, and especially how to better use that muscle, right? And how to get the most from the resources that you have at play, which I think is a big part of it, right? It's all about making sure it's having the right tools is great, but being able to use those tools to the best of your abilities is a whole other problem that needs to be solved. So I find that to be a kind of an interesting piece. Now, from a technology perspective, I know a lot of the work that you're doing is first party. So you're connecting into the systems of record and then leveraging your outbound communications technologies. So is there anything else from a technical perspective that you think the US that's really different from what you're seeing in other BPO locations?
Well, again, especially from the third-party perspective, when we're working off our own platform, I mean, that's really when technology becomes a huge enabler. And again, with a lot of familiarity in terms of, especially in our local environment, when we operating in this environment, working on making sure we partner with global US companies, UK companies on things like dialers, which are still important in terms of workforce management systems, in terms of scheduling. When you're running thousand seats plus, you got to have a system to manage that. And much more interesting, the parts that I like are really the worlds around, really using voice analytics, using empathy meters, using, obviously, as we're going now into more artificial intelligence, modeling in terms of understanding and segmenting portfolios. Those are all really core to our business, and even as something as minor, but from an operational perspective, which is a lot of fun, is gamification. Using that in our world. So we have a lot of we have invested a lot in terms of that. We have a good understanding of that. Again, it's exciting when we partner with other collections businesses globally, and we can talk and see what's happening. And again, when we go out to these things, we talk to everyone, and we try not just stay abreast, but stay ahead of the curve in terms of what technology is. And yeah, it's very exciting. AI is going to be interesting. So we're all looking at that and working out where it fits exactly into the whole ecosystem.
Wow.
Adam, maybe I can just add to that.
Please.
I think we very much aware of is that we at the moment maybe in the bums and seats business. That's what it is, and that's what the typical perspective is of a offshoring business. But that's not the future. Future is really to augment the voice offering, the person offering, the people offering with technology. And as technology becomes a lot more prominent and developed, we are going to go with you on that journey to see how we can help you with our technology link into your organization in order to reduce costs. Because that, in the end, is the primary objective of any organization, is to becoming more efficient despite all the services that they are using. And we want to go with you on a per people journey, but also the tech journey, and hopefully over time make the total cost perspective of offering these services at a lower cost point.
So what you did, Carl, when you were kind of answering that question, one of the things that you brought up is kind of one of my big topics for 2024, and that's gamification. And so I'm curious as to how you guys are leveraging the gamification technology these days, because that's something I'm really digging into this year.
It is interesting. It obviously needs a business case and a use case for every particular instance. In our world, what really drove us to that to go that way was when we adopted a hybrid model, and it was a really interesting technology to recreate and emulate to some degree a good call center environment in a hybrid model. Anyone that's been in the business will know that you walk into a call center and you can immediately feel the energy or not. And that tells you a lot about what's happening or not happening. I mean, you can just tell after 5 seconds. But we wanted to create that in a wider system, irrespective of where people were sitting, and it does achieve that. So it really gives our agents another form. Obviously, they're aligned using gamification. It's important to make it fun, but also aligned to serious business objectives. Then you get the best of both worlds. And it's also part of the way the world's working. Again, I mentioned earlier the teenagers. So, every generation is different, and you've got to adapt to that, and that's something that can work well with a younger workforce. Maybe
I got to admit something to you. Gamification has got me caught, right? So as I married a woman from Brazil, I was learning Portuguese. And so I've been learning Portuguese in an app called Duolingo, and that the gamification of my streak has like taken over my life. Like I have to do that every day. So I feel like I've become victim, or I've benefited from, I guess, in many ways, that gamification technology. Using that in the call center environment, I think, is going to be a very interesting way. Like your immediate use of it from a hybrid perspective is insightful, right? What a great way to deploy that very useful piece of technology to try and replicate something that we lost overnight. And I struggled with it. A lot of organizations struggled with all of a sudden having this remote work from home workforce. And for me, it was on a global scale. So we were dealing with all kinds of countries and things simultaneously. It was a lot. So it's curious to see how that's all come together, but it kind of circles us back around to your people as well. And I know that's one of the things that you guys have really talked about being the proudest about. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the call center agents that you're able to cultivate from South Africa, and kind of what maybe some of those criteria or attributes are that are really kind of rising that to the top, right? Where you're able to identify those people that are going to be a good fit.
Yeah, Adam, I think when you start looking at really what do we have able to source from, and one of the unfortunate realities within South Africa is our high unemployment rate,
Mm.
but that is despite having a very good education system. So most of the young people leave school 18 years old with a good understanding of English, speaking in this neutral accent, having a reasonable grasp of mathematics.
Mm.
And we utilize those capabilities and bring those into our organization. And
Mm.
we have a number of different types of education and learning and development initiatives that bring in. And that's quite common in South Africa, is where you bring young people in. But also, while they're in the call centers, we enable them to go through a learning and development program that gives them the equivalent of a degree in one way or the other. Some of them go on to study law, and some of them go on to become IT experts and BI experts and MI experts and so on. And that large pool of young people are always available and in a big way available. And with that enthusiasm, coupled with, unfortunately, the high unemployment, you've got a great access to a large pool of people.
Well, that is the opposite of what we have here in the United States right now. We do not have a large applicant pool. And I know that that's something that I think the organizations have been struggling with across the receivables management space, right? Is putting butts in seats, whether they're in a more remote location or even if they're in a major city and they're just unable to put enough butts in seats, right? Like that is a real thing. Now, you talked about a couple of interesting development techniques there as well. So you've got these I'm going to call them high school age students, right? 18 that are coming out of like the core schooling. And then through their work with a call center, they're able to actually further their education. I mean, can we talk about that a little bit more? I feel like that is a major driving factor of success.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's something very specific about our model that we do. We've got two schemes that we run, and they're called Funza and Nasela, but in essence, they're really around educating our staff over and above the normal on-the-job training. Obviously, we train the agents fit for their job. We give them workplace environment. We talk about culture, language, all those things. We obviously give leaders who are coming out of the agents ranks. We've got our own leadership development, and the first level of leadership is always a very interesting part because you got agents who are young. They suddenly now managing their peers when their first promotion, and they need the tool set. So we spend a lot of time giving them that toolkit to learn how do you have a difficult discussion, or how do you motivate people. So that's all stuff that we do in the ordinary course. But things that I'm really proud of, because they're really transformational, is where we offer our employees access to scholarships. I hope I got the term right, sorry, in the US context, but in essence, they can apply. They need at least a year's tenure, and obviously they have to be good citizens. But then they can apply for the one schemes for themselves, and that's where they might have a desire to go into HR or IT or finance, and it's not necessarily their current job, and that often leads to a talent pool where they will go into our business in those functions. And then at the same time, they can also apply for their family, and in particular, it's often around school-going children, and we help them with education, in terms of that aspect, and that's a real huge benefit. And we see some of those stories as agents. Because we've been around for 25 plus years, where agents have had their dependents being educated through schemes. They've gone on to be doctors and engineers and professionals, and it's just it's really about education is really core to our business. Ultimately, technology is important, but people are the key that unlocks that technology and that ability. So I could probably go on. I'll take the whole hour if I talked about education and people. But that's kind of
Well, I got more
key
people questions, man. I'm not going to let you off the hook that easy. I got more people questions because you're saying some really interesting things about how you guys are going through development. But as you're bringing these people in, you're getting a young person engaged into the organization. You're helping them to grow, and you're saying some of them are going off to become doctors and lawyers, and that's absolutely fantastic, right? Because you're providing that pathway and you're creating opportunity across your across your local community. But how do you go about trying to retain that top tier talent? Like, you've invested in these people, you've got this great talent. Like, what kind of things are you doing? And it sounds like some of that is actually moving them up through your own organization or moving them laterally to other job functions where they may find more satisfaction. But how does that
Absolutely.
look? How does that look from a retention standpoint?
Absolutely. So there's more than one thing. There's not just one thing. I mean, and you're right. I mean, career development, career opportunities is a huge benefit. Again, going back to the leadership development, if you don't have good leaders, people leave. People leave because have bad leaders. So we have to invest a lot in that. But of course, the other basics have to be there. We have to make sure we remunerate our employees, fairly and well, and we look after them in terms of our culture and our values. So if you ever came to our business, you'll see our values are plastered all over. And one of those values is really how you engage with each other respectfully. So the environment's got to be good. The actual workplace environment's important. They've got to come into an area, and again, if anyone wants to come visit our premises, they'll see our call centers. They are a great place to work. They're not they're well lit. They're comfortable. They got hot coffee, as much tea as they want, water. Access to good facilities. In this facility where we're here, we've got a creche for young mothers. We've got a gym if you want to work out. We've got a canteen. We've got a clinic for our employees. And that's quite an important thing, because public healthcare sometimes is difficult to access or takes a very long time, so they can access clinics. We have an employee assistance program where they can speak to people, professionals, if they need assistance in life. I mean, it might be them or their family members, because life's around them, so they might have challenges. So it's building and building and building and layers. But again, it's the basics: how you treat people, how you manage them. I mean, sure, we expect people to be able to perform and perform, and that's important. How you remunerate or recognize them. But it's all of the other things as well that then kind of form some stickiness, and we do see good retention. And I think that's the exciting thing for us when we partner with offshore clients for the kind of roles that we're talking about. I know it's challenging sometimes in the US to attract and retain people, but in this environment, our employees, our staff, they turn up, they're excited about the opportunity, they love their work, and you find good retention as a result.
So as you're engaging with the staff and their families, it sounds like social impact is a really important factor for your organization on the whole. And I know you guys are heavily involved in some charitable work and some other things. Talk to me a little bit about the social impact that your organization is having on the local community.
Yeah, I think so we've chosen education and schools, and in being involved in schools in various forms. We have a program where we encourage some of our clients to send some of their people to come and help us build schools and make a difference at schools. We have an initiative where for every offshore agent that we employ, we educate a child. So we call it the One Agent, One Child initiative. We have partnered with we've partnered with an organization called Shadow Careers, which has enables to influence the career path of people through school, so that contact centers actually becomes a career rather than a stepping stone to something else, which is you typically find with contact centers. We're trying to influence school curriculums. We're trying to make a difference to the way schools are run, and then create infrastructure. So those are things. I mean, through the partnership with Mellon, educate the school system. So we've got 13 schools where this is happening. So very much part and parcel of what we do. In terms of helping them, and then hopefully, as Carl said, these youngsters come through and through our environment, they get educated, and we've got many of our people that ended up with MBAs. So through that process, we don't only create jobs when people leave school, but we enable them to have a rich and educated life before that.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like you guys are having a serious impact on your own people and the people around you, right? Like the people around them, and that sphere of influence is just so important as we talk through some of these items. Now, it sounds like you guys are, we've talked about the government, the technology, like we've talked about all that infrastructure. Now, I know that looking at the list of people that are currently watching this webinar, I got to ask some questions I know that they want to hear the answers to. First one's going to be about performance and money. And let me kind of frame this, right? So performance is important to all of us. So I want to talk a little bit about the tie-in between how you're managing the people and the performance that you're achieving, right? But I also want to make sure that we cover and talk a little bit about the currency difference, but then the value difference, because I think people get caught up in currency differences. You know, Brazil's 5-1. That does not mean that I'm getting 5-1. You know, India's 80-1. That does not mean that you're buying 80-1. So I want to kind of talk to people a little bit so that they can understand the value proposition, and kind of understand like what does that mean from a performance standpoint, because you know in the collections business we are financially driven, right? Like that's where we make our decisions. We're using the data to drive financial performance. So talk to me a little bit about financial performance, you know, from a call center perspective, but also like let's talk a little bit about the currency and basket of goods, so to speak.
Carl, is it yours? Okay, I'll go for that. That's
I thought I'd make that one easy.
We're gonna leave it. We're gonna leave it. All right. No. So I think there's so of course the big opportunity as we have a lot of other geographies like the Philippines, like India, like the Latin American countries. There's definitely a labor arbitrage opportunity. The cost of labor is very different than it is, you know, in those geographies and as it is with us.
Sure.
From a price point, South Africa, I think compares well with most geographies. We are definitely a little bit more expensive if you go to a purely an hourly rate perspective than India and the Philippines. Maybe I think we compare well with Latin America, and Jamaica and so on. But I think what is important to understand is that there's a price point, and I think there's various different types of stats. But if you were to employ somebody onshore in the US and trying to get that same resource in South Africa, there could be as much as a 50 to 60% hourly rate difference. Okay, wow. And I think that is so it's quite material. Sure. But sometimes you pay, you get what you pay for in many respects.
For what you pay for.
And so we believe, in the South African construct and many of our competitors as well, try not to compete only on price, because we believe that does not necessarily stand well for the long term. And I believe that the combination of the technology that we provide, the quality of the service, the lack of reworking and having complaints. We are very much aware of the compliance construct within the states. It's important that you pay your people well, but you also get value for that. So I think if you bring on top of that a lower attrition rate, I think all these benefits that we give our people bring in lower attrition rates. So I think we're sitting somewhere, depending on which service it is, it's somewhere between 30 and 40% per annum, which is materially less than sometimes you get in the hundreds. And for that, you're getting a good value product. And on that is that things like team leader to agent ratios. What sort of oversight, quality assurance constructs are included or not included. What is the licensing? Are we working on client system or on proprietary system? I mean, there's a whole construct of things that but I think the value that we bring into this is actually at a very good price point. So that I think describes some of it.
That's a good answer. I like that.
As an old salesman, it's one of those, it depends, Adam, it depends, so.
Well, from a value proposition standpoint, I agree with everything that you just said, right? Like it's not just about the dollar comparison, it's about the value comparison, right? Yeah. And I think that's an important distinction, is that, and I honestly don't know what is the currency conversion right now?
Approaching 20.
But yeah,
it's
round up 20 to 1.
20 to 1, yeah. So I mean, but regardless, I think people hear that and they immediately start thinking that that's where the value arbitrage is between countries. And I just want to point out, for those that are not as familiar with working in multiple countries, that that's not the value. And I'm going to throw out just one little kind of tidbit here that's probably going to make you guys laugh a little bit. Are you familiar with the Big Mac index?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
Very much
so
absolutely.
so.
coming from South, that does not surprise me because I find that a lot of Americans are not familiar with this particular concept. And so I'm going to share this with our audience just briefly to put some conceptual thoughts in your mind. But if you want to compare the value of, let's call it the economic basket of goods that you can purchase for $1 or a unit of currency in any country, McDonald's has got it down to a science, right? To the point where I had the CEO of, or the former CEO of BIC was one of my college professors, and he sat me down and he said, the Big Mac is the most important thing you're going to learn in international finance. And I said, what are you talking, like, what are you talking about? Well, because McDonald's has scientifically priced the Big Mac in all of these different countries around the globe. So if you can get a better indication of the basket of goods that you can buy in any given country for 1 unit of currency by understanding the cost of a Big Mac than you can by understanding the cost of a currency conversion. It's weird. I mean, it's weird to think about. Like McDonald's has this down to a science, right? But you also don't think about them as a
Yeah,
real estate company. So I
well,
mean,
that's right. I
it's
mean, you can be in the US and buy a Big Mac, or be in Joburg, South Africa, buy a Big Mac, and just convert. It just makes perfect sense. Just adding on, seeing I gave Steph the difficult question. In terms of our proposition, we obviously Steph talked about the cost financial side
Mhm.
and the value side, and especially when we're engaging and looking at partnering in the collections and receivables management space. I mean, we've grown up in that, and that's where we feel is we offer something differently, slightly different to just other generic BPO players in that space, because we've been doing this for 25 years. So we've seen all the metrics, whether it's early stage and it's roll rate for provisions, whether it's maybe more the net promoter score, quality stuff, to
Mhm.
later stage cash collected, panel rankings, or debt buying, getting the investment collection yields. We wouldn't have been around for 25 years if we didn't understand these. Obviously, calibrate the operation to
Mhm.
achieve what is required, and I mean that's kind of our core. It's in our DNA. So that's really important. That obviously, we need to understand with our clients the particular mandate, where it is and what the metrics are. But we're very good at then ensuring we achieve those. I mean, and we're very competitive and driven in that sense.
I thought you guys said I really like the way that you can also balance the collector to manager ratio. Like you've got a lot of different levers that you can pull to calibrate the situation to the need of the client. I find that to be interesting because not every client has the same need. No two debt buyers operate exactly the same way. No two collection agencies operate exactly the same way. I didn't learn that until I started, writing policy and procedure and getting into the
Yeah.
details to really see the nuances of the differences. But those nuances really do amount to some major differences over time. Now, I know another one from the auditors that I can see in the list here. One of their big questions is going to be, okay, so now I got to audit you. I got to go to South Africa. Like, what's that mean? And I'm asking this question also because I'm planning this trip now. So I want to have this conversation. Like, let's talk a little bit. And I've seen the slides with the travel times and all of that. But the reality is, it's really not that much further out of the way than most of the BPO destinations that
No.
we travel to today. So let's talk a little bit about what that means for those in the US. It's
Yeah, so we've got so there are direct flights from Atlanta and from Newark and New
Mhm.
Jersey. United and Delta flies directly. Flying via Europe is also possible. It adds a little bit of a longer trip, but flying directly here is somewhere between 15 and 17 hours. Directly. So it's a long trip. But if you compare that to flying to the Philippines or flying to India, you would definitely. We can't compare to nearshore markets. So the latter, and that's why we appreciate that they are, and of course, beautiful places, but very friendly people. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's a 15-hour trip. United Delta flies directly. You fly straight into Johannesburg, and if you want to go to some of the other call centers like Durban and Cape Town, you can fly directly to Cape Town. And you can also then it's Joburg and Johannesburg and Durban is roughly an hour apart, so it's a quick hop. And to Cape Town, it's another 2 hours. So connectivity, availability of flights, etc. Inland, it's very easy to get from one spot to the other, and generally very easy to do. And listen, let me tell you, I've spent on both Delta and United, and very comfortable. Great service, great flight. So no.
Look, that I know that sounds crazy, but it's a very important question for those of us that have spent a lot of time on the road actually conducting these site visits and when you're dealing with international, you got to think a little bit more and you got to plan a little bit more. So if for someone who's coming to South Africa, what kind of additional time would you suggest be spending in the country, right? Like to be able to experience the culture. It's one thing to audit a collection, like it's one thing to audit a call center. It's another thing to actually experience a culture. So like
So
how long do you stay to experience the
yeah,
culture?
yeah. So probably one of the best value propositions of people to go on a safari. So after you've done your work, you spend 3 or 4 days in the office. There's a multitude of options to jump on a small plane and fly for an hour and go spend a few days a week and 3 4 days in the bush, as we call it. Of course, coastal areas. Durban, which is of course one of the large contact center cities. Johannesburg has got an extremely vibrant place. Cape Town, beautiful as it is, probably our most well-known city in the country. Definitely places to go visit. And let me tell you, one of the things that you must do in South Africa is you must eat well, and you must, if you enjoy your wine, you must drink wine. I think from a value proposition, that's probably our best offering in the
Okay.
world.
Yeah,
Hey,
again, we can add on if you like golfing, we've got world-class golf courses. I mean, that's where Gary Player learns how to play golf. And we've got if you like surfing, we've got world-class surfing beaches. If you like hiking, there's really something for everyone. And I mean, local produce, of course, we're proud of our wine industry, our local food industry. So again, restaurants, very diverse. We have cultures from all over the world, so you'll really get a huge opportunity. Seafood, yeah. So I mean, you could spend months here and not be bored, but you could do it 4 or 5 days. You can get a good introduction and a good sense.
Here's what I hear is don't shortchange it. Spend some time.
Yeah, you
Take an
just spend
extra
some time.
week and go float around or plan yourself out and actually go experience the culture. That's for me, that's always been a big thing, right? Like going down to
Yeah,
Brazil, I'll spend a month and a half down there. I like to spend time in India, like because it's not about just having my people there.
Yeah,
It's about understanding their perspective, right? And going and experiencing a culture, I think provides you with a lot of insight as to how to manage, how to interact, how to become
absolutely.
part of a culture. Because it's always been gonna say a detractor for me when I look at the BPO space. When organizations on the US side think about it as our team and your team, because it's not, it's our team, right? And are we
yeah.
going to take the time to actually engage with the culture and the people in which we're going to be working to create our team? Because you can't just do it online.
Yeah,
I'm
Adam,
saying that from experience.
yeah, and Adam, people, and Johannesburg is extremely underrated. Let me tell you.
Mhm.
I mean, Carl and I live, work here. I lived here since the age of 9, so that's almost 44 years now, and it's a great place. I mean, it's and it's also in our view a wonderful place to go see where our agents come from.
Mhm.
How is it they live? Where do they go to school? What's their social environment? Because let me tell you, you can come to Johannesburg and feel that you're in the first world city anywhere in the US or anywhere in Europe, and you won't see anything else but first world infrastructure. And that's sometimes, and so it's a good place. Good vibe, good place.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to coming down there and checking it out. So it's definitely on our agenda. I'll be talking with you some more about that at RMAI and looking at dates and how to
yeah,
plan appropriately. Because for those of you in the US, understand Southern Hemisphere, right? Like the seasons are different. So you have to consider that as you're looking at setting up your own travel plans, and trying to get the most out of those types of trips. So I'm very much looking forward to chatting with you guys in person at RMAI.
yeah.
So you guys will be floating out. This is your first time coming to the conference too, right?
Yep, first time for me,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's our first RMAI.
Mhm.
We've been to other conferences
Sure.
and have been prominent in other places, but RMAI is the first one. So, given the fact that it's the week before the Super Bowl final, and now the finalists have been decided, I must say I got it wrong completely. But in any case, I thought the Lions were going to play the Braves. But in any case, there you go. completely wrong.
Hey, anything can happen. What can I say?
Yeah,
Just
so
depends on what the
people must be
NFL wants.
Yeah, that's right. So you must be on the lookout for us. We're going to bring our Springbok rugby jerseys and try and compete with the football frenzy that we're going to see in Vegas. But yeah, so be on the lookout. We're the guys in green.
We will. I will definitely be finding you. I'm looking forward to an opportunity, guys, really to get to sit down, hang out, and get to know you guys personally a little bit better. Because with all the communications that we've had and all the chats and everything, like I feel like I've really gotten to know the organization, and not just you gentlemen, but you guys are coming with a small team, and it feels like everybody that I've interacted with has had their own expertise, their own something to bring to the table, and it's really been a lot of fun to get to know you guys. So I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me today. Having you guys on here has been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. It's been great chatting to you. And yeah, we can't wait to meet in person and hopefully, meet some of the people on the other end of the webinar. Just please come up and say hi. Come chat to us.
Well, I've got the webinar list here. I'll make sure I connect you with at least a handful of them.
Awesome.
All right, cool. Thanks, Adam. See you guys at booth 112. Great stuff.
Very much looking forward to it, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. Audience, thank you so much for joining us today as well. We all really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you at the RMAI conference next week. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Adam. Have a good one.
Cheers, Adam.
Bye.